Uh, Good day. This is Darren from SimNation and doing a video for Draft Day Sports College Football 21, really focusing on the defensive aspect of the game, specifically defensive game planning. Um, as mentioned, this is SimNation College Football League. It is one of SimNation's, well, it is SimNation's only college football league, running on Draft Day Sports College Football 21. If you have an interest, I have the link in the video, and definitely just give us a look. It's a great community that we have going here, with a lot of different coaches. So always looking for new members, and if you have an interest, let me know. Um, uh, Defense to me is probably one of the hardest aspects of this game. And specifically, how do you create a good defense? I'm not going to use Maryland. I originally did this video using Maryland, and what I realized is it's probably not a good idea to use them because, for those of you who don't know, SimNation Maryland is one of the superpowers, which means that they have 4 and 5 stars regularly playing defense, which means I can get away with a lot at Maryland I can't get away with at, say, Washington State, which is one of my other teams. So I'm going to do this with Washington State. I'm coming off a loss to Gary. I didn't do any defensive planning really, and I just trusted that my defense would shut his offense down, and it didn't. My offense had a pretty good game. Defense had a horrible game. So I think a couple of things about defensive planning is, again, like offense, it all starts with your recruiting and it all starts with your staff hires. In SimNation, we have it set up to where whatever the playbook is that you're running is really going to be the plays that the coordinator calls. If you do weights, they're going to call the plays that you weight more heavily. If you don't do weights, they're just going to choose from the list of plays that you have. So you still want to make sure that you have generally a coordinator who can run the plays that you're calling. So if you are wanting to do a heavily nickel defense and you're hiring a 5-2 guy who only focuses on the run, you're going to have some problems. And those problems will likely translate into them not doing what they're supposed to do when they're supposed to do it. So make sure that as you hire staff, you're hiring them in the context of the type of defense you want to run or the type of defense you think you want to run. The same thing goes for recruiting. If you're going to run a lot of zone, you're going to recruit for agility. If you're going to run a lot of man coverage, you're going to recruit for likely speed. Skill matters across the board. You should always recruit for skill, but if you're going to do a lot of pass rushing, you're going to want speed and agility over, say, tackling and strength. If you're going to do a lot of run type defenses, if you're doing a 3-4, you're going to want to get traditionally pretty fast defensive ends with very strong defensive tackles, and then your linebacking core will likely be mix of pretty agile, great tacklers along with pretty fast and decent tacklers, but fast and agile and good hands to be able to do coverage. So if you put all that together, that kind of gives you how you want to be defensively. In the case of Washington State, they really haven't done it this year. They have in the past, and I'll show you proof that this defense has traditionally been good. I traditionally like Washington State to be an aggressive, pass-oriented defense that gets a lot of sacks and a lot of interceptions. And generally will stop the pass. The reason for that is they said in the Pac-12 is a pass-happy conference. So if you can't defend the pass, you're going to lose games. And actually, if you look, you kind of see that, right? I lost to Stanford, pass-happy. California, pass-happy. Gary, pass-happy me. And generally, my losses have come against pass-happy teams versus my wins have come really against teams that were a little bit more balanced. So In this case, I want to make sure that I kind of focus in on the identity. Now, defensively, I haven't done that well this year because I've been focused on the offense. I'm trying to create a option offense here at Washington State. Largely been successful, but it's been at the cost of the defense because I haven't done much defensive planning. So I'm going to take that into account this week. I'm not going to use a lot of plays I've been using because frankly they're not working. Mostly because there was a lot of turnover from last year. They had a very good defense for 3 years, mostly because of the fact that they had exactly what I was looking for. They had fast defensive ends that were highly agile. They had very good run-stopping defensive tackles. The linebacker core, the outside linebackers could do coverage. The inside could do run. And I had very, very good cornerbacks who could essentially block off the pass. I still have good cornerbacks, but they're not very skilled, which means they make a lot of mistakes. My linebackers are slower than they were a year ago, which means I can't really do the coverage thing I used to do. They're still fast enough to get into the backfield and disrupt, but just not like they were last year. And the defensive ends still pretty fast and good enough to do get into the backfield. The defensive tackles are maybe a step slower. But the funny thing is, my leading sacker is a cornerback. Part of that is because I blitz a lot off of the edge. But going to kind of go into the defensive planning. So defensive planning outside of your roster and your staff, and I'll talk about that a little bit. But if you look at the staff person, my coordinator is George Elroge. That doesn't matter. What really matters is right here is he's an aggressive power offense. That doesn't matter. Defense does. He's a 5'2" guy. Not optimal for me, but he's been my coordinator for the last 3 or 4 seasons. He's done pretty well. As you can see, they've ranked first or second in the conference. Yards allowed first or second until this season. They're not going to be anywhere near that. And I got him because he's a really good coach of defense and he's highly flexible. So what that means is I can actually have him run 3-4s and stuff, and he's flexible to it. Now, if he didn't have a high flexibility rating, he'd probably be doing really bad for me. But make sure you read this text because this gives you kind of an idea of what they're good at. So safeties are important. He likes man coverage. That's one of the reasons why I got him. And he targets the run game. He doesn't really do that for me because I'm in a conference where running is not optimal. If you look at my roster, just to kind of go through that real quick, because this will be important for depth chart planning. You notice right away I have a lot of speed on the cornerbacks. Agility is decent. It's not great. Tackling, pretty horrible, but you kind of expect that. And then the hands is pretty decent as well. One of the problems I'm having is Kenny's out hurt. Anytime you see questionable on anyone, it means they're not going to play. If they're probable, they will play. So decent hands. My skill is pretty bad. So my 2 best are Ambrose, which makes sense, and Smith. The other thing to watch for here, and this gets into formations and how often people are on the field, is anyone who has less than a 70 endurance, you're going to run and rotate them on and off the field. You do that through formations, and I'll show you how to do that in a minute. So I'm not going to run a lot of zone. I don't have the agility for it, but I do have the speed for man coverage. So man coverage will always probably be my predominant defensive backfield pattern. Linebackers don't have a lot of speed at all. So doing man coverage outside of Dean Barton, probably not a good idea. My tackling is okay. I've got decent skill, other than a couple people here are not very skilled. But I do have a couple people I got to watch for if they're playing that I'm going to have to rotate them. Thankfully, Cleveland is redshirted, but Barton, if I put him on the field, I'm going to need to rotate him off. Same with Montague. So, in looking at this, what I would say is I'm more prepped for the run than I am the pass. So I'm not going to do a lot of man coverage when I choose my plays for linebackers. I'm going to probably try to keep them in the run game and out of the pass game, which may mean that I'm going to run nickel a little bit more because I'm going to need the extra defensive back on the field, or I'm going to run a 3-3-5 or a 4-2-5, something along those lines. But I think I'll probably end up running a lot of nickel and a lot of dime. So in the passing game, defensive tackle, it's not bad, but not great. Speed is not there. Strength is okay. Agility is okay on a lot of people. I've got good skill. Generally, I have a couple people who can probably stay on the field quite a bit. Conte is my best defensive tackle, and of course he's out. But which means that I'm gonna have to figure out who kind of is in. So with this, I'm probably going to keep my defensive tackle largely in the run game. So if I'm running a 3-4, I traditionally run a 3-4. That means that the tackle is going to need to largely be the person who has decent speed, decent agility, and a lot of strength to go with tackling, or just tackling, agility, and strength will matter the most for me. Defensive end, I have a little bit more to play with here. 70 is not bad, especially when you factor in their strength. They're pretty strong. They're not very agile. So I'm probably going to blitz a lot with my defensive ends, or try to put people in who are more into the passing game. So when we get to strategy, I'll probably set the defensive line to be more focused on pass rush, and the linebackers to be more focused on run coverage. Free safety, same thing. Is that I've got speed, I've got decent tackling, so they can play in both aspects of the game. My best person, of course, is not my fastest. Zambrano and Morgan are probably my two best free safeties in my eyes. Morgan is probably better than Zambrano, and they got decent endurance, so I'm not going to need to rotate them in and out a lot. We'll talk about Crittenden in a moment. I play him a lot at linebacker. I'm sorry, her. I play her a lot at linebacker to try to compensate for the coverage issues I have on the outside. I'm not going to do that anymore. I'm going to play him at strong safety because I'm playing him out of position, and the person I normally play Crittenden doesn't have a great skill set. So I may move Crittenden into more of a nickel package to try to compensate there. So that's what I've got to work with. So in summary, in looking at this, I've got a defensive line that largely can pass rush. I have a linebacking core that largely can deal with the run. They're not going to do good against the pass. My defensive backfield is really stacked for man coverage, which means that's what I should focus on. And then my defensive coordinator likes to guard against the run, but he likes man coverage, and he's a 5-2. So the first thing that you should always do when game planning is look at your opponent. So I'm playing Arizona. First thing I'm looking for Arizona is what do they really do? So they pass a lot is what I'm seeing just off this. They don't have any really big things. I'm looking here to see if there's anyone who stands out that I may want to double cover. There isn't. So I'm going to look at the last 3 games, and what I'm looking for here is to try to get an understanding of what they're doing. So there are different ways to do this. I'm going to preface this with, I've already jotted down a lot of notes about Arizona before I even started this video. But one of the things I'm doing in the background is I'm looking at a calculator, and I'm seeing how often they're doing things. And it's going to tell me that this will help me guide how many playbooks I actually use when I get to strategy. So because they're predominantly pass, I'm going to go with one playbook. If they were mixing it up, like if I saw 14-23 Hill instead of 23-14, and then I saw 16-7, then 115, I would probably need to have two playbooks for this game. One that's focused on run, one that's focused on pass. In this case, they're going to pass the ball, so I'm going to go with one playbook. It's going to be heavy pass, but with some run plays covered in to make sure that they don't essentially blow me out of the water if they switch to run. Sometimes you have three. So if those numbers were different, I would go with two. But the other thing is some people use three. Some people use four. With Maryland, I use two. I use a run and a pass. I do have a third that I occasionally will use, which is a goal line. And really that is for when they're in the red zone. I switch the playbook up to focus on how they're scoring their touchdowns. So if they're scoring their touchdowns a lot on the run, but they're passing the ball a lot, I want to make sure I can factor for that in the goal line set. In looking at this, if I had to guess, there's a decent amount of runs in Hill. So I would almost say that maybe potentially on 1st and 10, they're running the ball a little bit more. Or on 1st and short. So I would say on 1st down, it's roughly, they are running the ball more frequently than they are on other downs. So I'll just want to account for that in my playbook to make sure that I have a decent number of run plays in there to offset the fact that on 1st down they are running the ball but not running it with enough frequency that I could say 1st and 10 run, 1st and short run, 1st and long pass, or even get an idea of a frequency of that. The other two are relatively easy. They're passing the ball quite frequently. I'm going to look down here to see, did they shred anything? So sweep right, they shredded a 5-2. Passing the ball, they shredded 5-2. So I probably don't want to run any 5-2 based on what I'm seeing here. Then I'm going to look and see does anything else stand out. I run 3-4s, so I'm kind of curious to see how they're doing against 3-4s. They're not doing great, or they're doing moderate. I definitely want to avoid 4-3s from what I'm seeing. I run a lot of nickel and dime. How they doing against that? They did pretty decently against the nickel and the dime. Now, what I don't know is, does Colorado run a zone or do they run a man? There's just no way for me to know that. So I'm going to look at Utah, see what they did here at Utah, 57-30 again. So they're not changing from week to week is what I'm seeing. We'll look at USC. Oops, clicked on the wrong one. Go back here. And again, they're largely staying the same. I think I skipped over UCLA. UCLA, they're a little different. I may want to keep that in the back of my mind. So now I'm going to go back to Washington State. So I have a good idea of what it is that they're doing. So I've made a decision. I'm going to go with one playbook. But before I finalize that decision, I'm going to skip over here to game planning. And I'm going to look right here to see what they're doing. And what I see is largely they're throwing the ball. In an ideal world, if I wasn't going with one playbook where I'm going to mix it up, I would probably have a third one because this is different than what they're actually doing in reality normally. And I would want to account for that when I come back to play calling in the goal line sets. So, formations, we talked about this a little bit. Probably a good idea to step back and go to depth. So again, we discovered some things. One is Conte's hurt, so I should take him out, right? So Torres, I'll move Pruitt up, move Torres up, and drop Cobb in Hill, and then bring Jenkins up. So, largely put, my defensive line, it's always just a good idea to rotate your defensive line, no matter how good they are. I'm going to bring Thorpe. Actually, I won't leave that alone. I'm going to bring Thorpe in Hill. So I'm making some minor adjustments here. This is what I was talking about. I've been playing her out of position because I'm trying to deal with the fact that I just don't have speed in my linebacking core, and that's hurting me, so I'm going to stop doing that. I'm going to bring Montague and Hill. And now, what I talked about earlier is going to matter is I'm going to need to rotate those two because they're not, they don't have a great endurance. I'm going to bring Smith uphill. Actually, no, I'm not. I'm going to bring Zambrano. No, actually, Zambrano starts. I'm going to bring, just bear with me 1 second, because I forgot. I'm going to bring her in Hill. So I'm good though. Just make sure I got everything else right, and I do. Okay, so I'm going to save this package. Now, knowing that I'm going to rotate, what I'm going to do is I'm going to go default defense 2. Just make sure I remember who I got so I don't replicate it. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to take Cobb, I'm going to bring Jenkins, and then I'm going to have Pruitt and Torres back them up. And I'm going to bring Thorpe in, and I'm going to bring Carico in, and then I will have Murphy, and then Miller. And what I'm doing is I'm creating a situation by which I can rotate these people in and out. So what I want to do here is I want to bring in Maples. Maples has decent speed, so actually I should check that, but it's okay to switch back and forth, by the way, because what you're trying to do is my outside linebackers need to have some speed and need to have agility, so Maples is a bad idea. So Slade and Mason are actually the two better, so I'm going to have to move Slade around, or I can move Brown, but Brown's hands are really bad. He's got good agility, though, so I may do that. So I'll look to move Brown to the outside, and then if Mason or Slade are not starting. So we'll go back to defense. So Brown is, and so is Slade, but Mason is not. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to put Danny Wynn in. And then what I'm going to do here is I'm going to put Brown as the starter, and then I'm going to put Mason as that. And then here, of course, I don't need to worry about her. He's got really good endurance, so does Benefield, so I don't need to change though. So what I did though is I've now created to where I can now go to back to strategy, go back to formations, scroll down, and now what I can say is, because I'm rotating my line and my linebackers, I'm probably going to go with a 3 and a 1, which means 75% of the time my starter's on the field, 25% of the time they're not. And I already know what defensive formations and plays I'm going to generally play, so it allows me to just set those. And just bear in mind, when you say 3 and 1, that means the guy's going to be on the default defense is going to be in place 75% of the time. I think I do have 5-2 plays that I'm going to run, so even though it may not be a good idea. And now we can go back to custom playbook. So I mentioned that you should always focus on what you do well. So go to your playbooks, and then what you're looking for here is anything less than 5. If it's a pass play, if it's a run play, anything that is less than 4, ideal is lower than 3.5. And again, you can see what they are by clicking on them and seeing the focus in this. So I'll carry Tampa 2 into my new defensive playbook, cover 3, linebackers watch, deep press man oval. Those will be in my new playbook. And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a new playbook. I'm going to go defense, and we'll just call this Tarkov Hertz. It's a reference. I play a lot of Escape from Tarkov, so anybody who plays it knows exactly what I'm talking about. So I have, in full transparency, I have already laid out what I believe is my playbook. And this is somewhat based on past experience. I know some plays work very well. So like for running, 3-4 man U spy is a good play. 3-4 U cover 2 is a good one as well. Cover 2 man, sorry. And again, if you notice, I will have some coverage, but there's not much I can do about that when I have a 3-4. But generally look and see where things are, right? So unders tend to favor if you're facing the offense, the right side, and if you're the offense, left side really, and then right side is oval. And then base is traditionally more of, it's more stacked in the middle, and then wide, of course, is out wide. So I will play a 3-4 wide. Let me find that OLB spy because I know that works generally. I play zero hooks as one of the battle oval plays you can play. It traditionally works in most of these games. I just have to find it, so give me a moment. There it is, zero hooks. And then I already have, we'll do cover 2 stuff. 3-4 U. And then, and again, you'll notice I'm going to choose a lot of run support plays because I don't want my defense out there. And then we'll do a zero flat because that traditionally wide zero flat is a good play too. I'm going to throw in a 5-2 or 2. Maybe a bad idea given what I saw, but these are traditionally good ones. So I'll do cover 2, and then I'll do lurker. These are 2 of the more common ones. And then I think those are my run plays. So I'm going to go in with 8 run plays. I'm going to go in with substantially more pass plays. So we'll start with time. DP cover 4 is one of the mainstays. It works very well. Deep press man cover is another one that if you're going to run a dime, or is it man cover or it's man over, sorry. Is another one of those that works very well. And then I'm going to try something. I've used this at Maryland, but I don't want to get too into it. Deep press gamble T double is a good one because one, it puts the linebackers up near the line, and it also is a generally good coverage one. And again, my linebackers are in run support, which is why I want them. And then we are going to go to nickel. I'm going to play a lot of nickel because I'm playing against a passed offense. And we're going to do linebackers watch. That's one of the mainstays. Cover 3 is another one that's pretty good. And that's the base one. So I just got to find it. Cover 3, there we go. And then we will do Tampa 2. Tampa 2 is one of the, again, it's one of the mainstays I use. Double man is something I've learned over the years traditionally works. It's a zone, so just, actually it's not a zone, it's a man. But You're not going to see me play a lot of zone this week because I'm worried about the opponent, and also I strongly suspect that they've been shredding zones. So I want to stay away from it. Linebacker down, T double is something I've used quite a bit. I'm comfortable with it. Linebacker's oval is another one I'll use because it's mixed in what it does with the line. And then I will likely run double man, 2, 3, 4 wides, which will be double man. Again, I've used this before. I'm fairly comfortable with it, and double X as well. So that's my playbook. Now, when you get to play calling, I'm not going to change my offense because my offense is doing pretty well. First of all, I'm going to put this playbook in for all of these. And again, I made the decision that I'm going with one playbook because what I've seen is they're predominant pass. They're not really mixing it up much, so I don't need to have two playbooks. I can get away with one. And now, when you think that they're going to run the most is where you'll start to tweak this. So I think first down, first and 10, first and short, they are running the ball at least 40% of the time. So I'm going to put those at 35. And the reason for it is against run plays, you don't want to blitz 100% of the time. You have the risk of running past them. So traditionally, I would say somewhere between 15 to 45 is a good blitz ratio for running plays. Anywhere from 50 to 100 is a good blitz ratio for pass. I tend to go 100, and you'll see that here. So again, I think that they're likely to run the ball most on second short. Third and short, they're not running it at all based on what I saw. Fourth and short, they're not running it at all. So I'm just going to go all in on the blitz on those downs. I'm just going to blitz every single time. They do have rushing touchdowns, so I'm going to back that off. If I'm winning, they're going to be throwing, so I'm going to blitz 100% of the time. If I'm losing, they're probably still going to be throwing, so I'm going to go 55. Then when you go to game planning, I'm going to create a new game plan only because I'm going to make some changes here. So I'm not going to, aggressive means I'm going to blitz more frequently or call the plays that have the blitz more frequently. Conservative means I'm going to back off of the blitz and play less risky man coverage. Balance is the two. It's not like offense though. Well, if you choose aggressive on offense, you're going for it on fourth down more often. Pass focus, they're going to pass. I'm not going to change that. I'm going to keep my coverage mixed because I want to run both plays. I am going to set this to pass rush. I'm going to change this over to mixed because I want it to run both plays. And again, the way that this works is what you set here will ultimately determine somewhat what the defensive coordinator was calling. So if you say only run first, then they're only going to focus on those it's run. So here it's a good idea just to go mixed. Conte's out hurt, so there's no way he's playing. Traditionally, I want this to be probably my smartest guy, so I'm going to choose Isaac Brown. I don't have anyone to double team. I'm not going to set these. Now, we talked about formations already. You notice I've got that set. There's not really anything else to the defense. So that's generally how I defensive game plan. Now, I'm going to export this because I don't want to do it again. I did not look at one thing, which is you can click the inbox, and then you can go to your scouting report and then see a lot of the same things I've already seen. But that's game planning in a nutshell. So kind of all starts at the beginning with staff hiring and recruiting. Figure out what you want your system to be, recruit for it, and hire staff for it. That's the most optimal method. Now, you don't always have to do that. You can hire people who are flexible, really good coaches, and then trust them to do their job. Now, there are some people who are very successful with letting the coordinator call all the plays using the playbook. If you're going to do that, make sure you hire a defensive coordinator that matches the talent you have, so that way they can actually do what they need to do. The critical thing is what determines man cover versus zone is the difference in your people's speed versus agility. Skill is always important. Pass rush versus run stop again is going to be really speed and agility versus really agility and strength and tackling. And then always look and see what you're doing well and trim off the things you're not doing well. Just get them out of there. Because if you're not doing them well, they're probably not worth keeping. But also, over the course of the season, see what works against certain types of teams and what doesn't. And if you're going to modify your playbook and you know that that playbook works well against certain teams, you might want to name it something or rename it or name the new one something different. So that way you keep that playbook and you can reference it down the road. There's some playbooks I have with Washington State, like base. Base has worked well in the past against run-oriented teams for me, so I keep it because if I run into a run-oriented team, and I don't think I'll see the next one until maybe week 15 against Washington, I might use that again. And then the key is just also keep a track of who's up at the top of the league in the different styles of defense. Like in SNCFL, it is Maryland, Alabama, Old Dominion, and Louisiana Monroe. So two of those are Skelter's team, one is Max's team, one's mine. Now, Maryland and Alabama and Louisiana Monroe probably are not the greatest examples to follow because they're all teams with 4 stars or 5 stars. So if you have that dynamic going on, by all means, look at them. Now, you're not going to see the plays they're calling. You only see the formations. But that in itself can help you sometimes with starting a playbook. In this league, I look at Old Dominion. Old Dominion is a 2 to 3 star heavy team. They are a middling power, but right now they're doing very well, and they've got one of the best defenses in the league. So I would definitely take a look at that. Now, there's a lot of back and forth about whether you should call fewer plays or more plays on defense. My advice is choose the one that works for you. For me, I don't tend to just call 10 plays. The reason for that is I tend to call the plays that I need for that week, and that could be 15, it could be 10. I say 10 because we're capped at 10. You have to have 10 in your playbook in this league. But I will say that I know Skelter probably calls closer to 10, and that reduces the amount of variance that he might see in his play calling, which for a low prestige team is very important, is you don't want a lot of variance. You want it to generally go the way you want it to. So if you call less plays, your defensive coordinator can only choose from less plays, and you're going to generally get the plays that work for you. Versus if you're worried about the CPU zoning in on the fact that you're calling the same play pretty frequently, you'll probably want to call more plays and divvy it up a little bit more so that way they can't zone in. At Maryland, I call somewhere around 15 to 20 defensive plays. And traditionally, it's probably about 5 or 6 run plays. And then the rest are pass or balanced. So that's kind of how to do game planning for defense. It's not an exact science. I think offense is closer to an exact science, but if you find this helpful or you want me to talk about something in more depth, I definitely will. I will tell you that 22 is currently in beta, and I am beta testing it, and I'll tell you that generally I like what I see. Brooks and the Wolverine Studios crew have done a really good job with that, and I'm very excited about what I see in 22 for SNCFL. If it releases this before we get to the end of the season, we will adopt it when we go to the new season. Uh, Mostly because we try not to change it up during the season because it creates a whole dynamic that could uh, really mess up the mess up the rankings. Um, but I do encourage you to take a look at SNCFL. I'll post the link in here. We have openings and we have a good coaching community. SimNation in general has a good community as well. We're going to do some overhauls of the forums and other things in the coming weeks. We have our own Slack. Discord, we're still got to work through that, but if you're interested, definitely drop me a note. Great community, and I will try to do another of these videos as 22 gets closer with how to do offensive, defensive, recruiting, and things like that. But this is how to plan for defense, and hopefully you find it useful. If you do, subscribe or drop a like. But overall, I hope that this helps you. Thank you, and have a great day.